Captain Jake Morrison stared at the strange message flickering on his ship's main screen. The UES Horizon had been exploring the outer edges of the solar system for 3 months, but this was the first time they had received any kind of signal from deep space. The message was in a language he had never seen before, full of symbols that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. "Dr. Chang, can you make sense of this?" Jake called to the ship's xenobiologist. Lisa Chang had spent years studying the possibility of alien life, but even she had never expected to encounter it like this. Lisa hurried to the captain's side, her dark eyes widening as she saw the display. "It's definitely not human," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But look at this. There are patterns here, mathematical sequences. It's trying to communicate with us." The ship's computer worked for hours to decode the message. When it finally broke through, the translation appeared on screen in simple English words that made Jake's blood run cold. "Warning to the inhabitants of the third planet. Your world has been marked as a quarantine zone. Do not attempt to leave your solar system. The ancient threat must remain contained." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all staring at the screen with the same expression of confusion and fear. "Ancient threat?" he asked. "What ancient threat?" Before anyone could answer, more messages started pouring in. Dozens of them, all in different alien languages, but all saying the same thing. Earth was quarantined. Earth was dangerous. Earth was supposed to be avoided at all costs. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Professor Dan Miller was having his own encounter with the impossible. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, his archaeological team had uncovered ruins that should not have existed. The structures were made of a material that looked like crystal but felt warm to the touch. They were covered in symbols similar to the ones appearing on Jake's ship. Dan knelt beside what looked like a control panel built into the wall of the largest structure. "This can't be right," he muttered to his assistant, a young graduate student named Pete Rogers. "Carbon dating puts these ruins at over 5 million years old. Humans weren't even close to existing back then." Pete was examining another part of the ruins with his flashlight. "Professor, you need to see this," he called out. "There's something still working in here." Dan joined Pete in front of a large crystalline screen that was glowing with soft blue light. On the screen was a map of the galaxy, showing Earth's position in relation to other star systems. Many of the other systems had markers next to them, markers that could only mean one thing. They were inhabited worlds. "How is this possible?" Dan whispered. "How could anyone on Earth have known about other inhabited planets 5 million years ago?" As if responding to his question, the screen changed. New symbols appeared, forming what looked like a countdown timer. The numbers were decreasing rapidly, and Dan realized with growing horror that whatever this countdown was measuring, it was almost at 0. Back in space, Jake's ship was suddenly surrounded by massive vessels that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The alien ships were 10 times larger than the Horizon, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that reflected the light of distant stars. A new voice came through the ship's communication system, speaking in heavily accented English. "Human vessel, you will prepare to be boarded. I am Admiral Kexthu of the Vorthan Empire. You have violated the ancient quarantine by activating the warning beacons." Jake exchanged worried glances with his crew. "We didn't activate anything," he said into the communication system. "We just received your messages." "Impossible," the alien voice replied. "The beacons have been dormant for 1,000 of your Earth years. They only activate when the quarantine is breached from within." Lisa was frantically working at her station, trying to make sense of what was happening. She had been analyzing the objects they had thought were asteroids in Earth's outer solar system. Now she realized they weren't asteroids at all. They were artificial constructs, ancient warning beacons that had been disguised to look like natural space debris. "Captain," she said, her voice shaking, "I'm detecting energy signatures from all the major asteroids in our outer system. They're not rocks. They're machines. They've been here all along, waiting." One of the alien ships moved closer to the horizon. Through the viewports, Jake could see strange beings moving around inside the alien vessel. They were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer in different colors. Admiral Kexthu's image appeared on the main screen. He looked almost human, but his eyes were larger and completely black. When he spoke, his mouth didn't quite match the words they were hearing. "Your species was never supposed to develop intelligence," the alien said. "Earth was designated as a prison world. The beings who created the quarantine expected the planet to remain lifeless forever." "Prison for what?" Jake demanded. "What could be so dangerous that an entire planet needs to be quarantined?" The alien admiral's expression grew even more serious. "Something that consumed entire civilizations before your son was even born. Something that feeds on intelligent life itself. The architects who built the prison called it the Devourer. Dan's team in the Amazon was experiencing their own revelations. The countdown timer on the ancient screen had reached 0, and the entire structure was now glowing with increasing brightness. Similar reports were coming in from archaeological sites around the world. Ancient ruins were activating everywhere, from the pyramids in Egypt to stone circles in England. "Professor Miller," Pete called out, pointing at the screen. "Look at this new message." The screen now displayed text in perfect English. "Quarantine protocol ending. Prison guards have reached maturity. Prepare for integration phase." Dan felt a chill run down his spine. Prison guards? Are they talking about us? About humans? The crystalline walls of the ruins began to vibrate with a low, musical tone. The sound seemed to carry through the ground itself, and reports started coming in that the same tone was being heard at every major archaeological site on Earth. Back in space, Admiral Kexthu was explaining the situation to Jake and his crew. "The Devourer was imprisoned on your world millions of years ago. The prison was designed to be self-maintaining, but it needed guardians, a species that would evolve on the planet and unknowingly maintain the barriers that kept the Devourer contained." "You're saying humans were created to be prison guards?" Jake asked in disbelief. "Not created," the alien replied. "Guided. Your evolution was carefully influenced to produce the right kind of intelligence, creative, adaptable, and most importantly, immune to the Devourer's influence." Lisa was monitoring communications from Earth. The reports coming in were incredible. Every major government was reporting the activation of previously unknown ancient structures. Military bases around the world were detecting energy signatures unlike anything in human technology. "Captain," she said urgently, "I'm getting reports that these structures are affecting our technology somehow. Cars, phones, computers, everything electronic is being upgraded with capabilities we don't understand." Admiral Kexthu's expression grew grim. "It has begun," he said. "The integration phase. Your species is being prepared for the final test." "What final test?" Jake demanded. "The test that will determine whether humanity is ready to take its place as the Devourer's keeper, or whether both your species and the thing you were meant to guard will need to be destroyed to protect the galaxy." The alien fleet moved into formation around Earth's solar system, but Jake realized they weren't there to help humanity. They were there to make sure that whatever was about to happen on Earth stayed contained, even if it meant destroying the entire human race. The alien fleet surrounding Earth's solar system moved into attack formation, but Admiral Kexthu hesitated. His instruments were showing something impossible, energy readings from Earth that exceeded anything his civilization had ever recorded. On Earth, the changes were happening everywhere at once. Lieutenant Commander Alex Hayes was stationed at a remote military base in Antarctica when the ice beneath his feet began to crack and shift. He watched in amazement as something massive pushed up through the frozen ground. "Base Command, are you seeing this?" Alex spoke into his radio, but the device in his hand no longer looked like the standard military equipment he had been using moments before. The radio now had a glowing blue screen showing a three-dimensional map of the entire continent. A crystalline spire burst through the ice sheet, rising nearly a mile into the air. The structure was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, made of the same warm crystal material that Professor Miller had found in the Amazon. As it reached its full height, it began to emit a deep harmonic tone that seemed to vibrate through Alex's entire body. Similar spires were emerging all over the planet. News reports flooded in from every continent. The spire in Antarctica was just one of dozens appearing worldwide. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, beneath the Sahara Desert, in the heart of major cities like New York and London, Dr. Lisa Chang was monitoring these events from the UES horizon, still surrounded by the alien fleet. Her instruments were going crazy trying to measure the energy output from Earth. "Captain Morrison," she called out, "the power readings from those spires are off the charts. Whatever they're doing, it's affecting every piece of technology on the planet." Jake Morrison was trying to maintain communication with Earth, while also dealing with Admiral Kexthu's increasingly hostile demands. The alien commander wanted Jake's ship to move away from Earth immediately, but Jake refused to abandon his home planet. "Your species is activating technology you don't understand," Admiral Kexthu warned through the communication channel. "The architect devices will upgrade your civilization too quickly. Your minds aren't ready for that level of advancement." "Maybe that's for us to decide," Jake replied firmly. "This is our world and these are our people down there." On Earth, the effects of the spires were becoming more apparent by the hour. Cars were transforming into hover vehicles that responded to their drivers' thoughts. Smartphones were displaying holographic interfaces that could translate any language instantly. Even simple tools were becoming incredibly advanced. Hammers that could reshape metal with a touch. Flashlights that could see through solid walls. Professor Dan Miller's team in the Amazon was at the center of the most dramatic changes. The ancient ruins they had discovered were now fully active, with corridors and chambers that seemed to extend deep into the earth. Dan and Pete Rogers explored these passages carefully, finding rooms filled with equipment that defied explanation. "Professor, look at this," Pete called from ahead. He was standing in front of a wall covered in moving images, holographic displays showing star maps, alien writing, and what looked like historical records of dozens of different civilizations. Dan approached the display and touched one of the images. Immediately, information flooded his mind, not in words but as direct knowledge. He suddenly understood that the architects were an ancient race that had existed millions of years before humans evolved. They had been the first civilization to encounter the Devourer, and they had spent eons learning how to contain it. "It's not just a prison," Dan whispered, his eyes wide with new understanding. "Earth is a testing ground. The architects wanted to see if a species could evolve that was naturally immune to the Devourer's influence." Meanwhile, in Antarctica, Alex Hayes was discovering that the spire's energy was affecting him personally. When he approached the crystalline structure, information began flowing into his mind. He could suddenly understand the purpose of every piece of equipment at the base, even devices he had never seen before. More importantly, he could sense other humans around the world who were having similar experiences. Somehow the spires were creating a network that connected human consciousness across the entire planet. Back in space, Jake's situation was becoming more dangerous. Admiral Kexthu had received new orders from the Galactic Union's High Command. The alien fleet was authorized to destroy Earth if the activation process couldn't be stopped. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Kexthu's voice carried a note of genuine regret. "My government has made their decision. If your species cannot control the architect technology within the next few hours, we will be forced to sterilize your planet." Lisa was working frantically to understand what was happening to the humans on Earth. Her instruments showed that every person on the planet was beginning to emit the same type of energy signature as the ancient spires. "Captain," she said urgently, "it's not just the technology that's changing. The humans themselves are being modified somehow. Their brain activity is increasing exponentially." Jake stared at the readings Lisa was showing him. If she was right, then humanity was evolving in real time, guided by technology that was millions of years old. Professor Miller's exploration of the ruins had led him to a central chamber where a massive sphere of dark energy hung suspended in the air. The sphere was perfectly smooth and completely black, but somehow Dan could sense something alive inside it. "The Devourer," he whispered, recognizing the prison that the architects had built. But as he watched, cracks were beginning to appear in the sphere's surface. Dark energy was seeping out, killing the plants it touched and making the air itself feel heavy and dangerous. Pete Rogers tried to approach the sphere but stumbled backward when a tendril of dark energy reached toward him. Instead of being consumed, however, Pete began to glow with the same blue light as the architect technology surrounding them. "Professor," Pete said, his voice filled with wonder, "I can feel it trying to feed on me, but something's blocking it. It's like there's a barrier inside my mind that it can't cross." Dan realized what this meant. Humans weren't just the prison guards. They were the key to the prison itself. The architects had engineered humanity to be naturally resistant to the Devourer's influence. Around the world, similar discoveries were being made. The spires were revealing hidden chambers beneath major cities, all containing pieces of architect technology. Military bases were finding their weapons upgraded with energy systems that could punch through solid steel. Scientists were discovering that their research equipment could now analyze materials at the subatomic level. But the most important change was in the humans themselves. People everywhere were reporting enhanced mental abilities, faster thinking, perfect memory, and most importantly, the ability to interface directly with the architect technology. Alex Hayes found that he could communicate with the Antarctic spire simply by touching its surface. The structure showed him images of space, revealing the locations of the alien fleet surrounding Earth and providing detailed information about their weapons and defensive systems. "This is incredible," Alex said to his radio, knowing that his words were being transmitted to military commanders around the world. "The spires are giving us tactical information about the alien forces. We're not defenseless anymore." Jake Morrison received these reports from Earth with growing amazement and concern. Humanity was becoming something new, something that even the advanced alien civilizations had never encountered. Admiral Kexthu was monitoring the same communications, and his expression grew increasingly worried. "Captain Morrison," he said, "your species is developing capabilities that exceed our own. The Galactic Union cannot allow such a threat to exist unchecked." "We're not a threat," Jake replied. "We're just trying to understand what's happening to us." "Perhaps," the alien admiral said, "but evolution cannot be undone. Your species will never be the same as it was yesterday. The question now is whether the galaxy can survive what humanity is becoming." As if to emphasize his point, reports began coming in from around Earth of humans demonstrating abilities that seemed impossible. A farmer in Kansas had somehow repaired a broken tractor by laying his hands on it. A teacher in Japan had solved mathematical equations that had puzzled scientists for decades. A child in Brazil had communicated telepathically with dolphins in a nearby river. Professor Miller watched the cracks in the Devourer's prison grow wider. Dark energy was escaping in larger amounts, but wherever it encountered a human, the same thing happened. The person would glow with blue light and remain unharmed. "We're not just immune to it," Dan realized. "We're containing it. Every human on Earth is becoming part of the prison system." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just evolving. They were becoming the ultimate guardians of one of the galaxy's most dangerous entities. The question was whether they could master their new abilities before the alien fleet decided that Earth posed too great a risk to be allowed to continue existing. The alien fleet's first attack on Earth was meant to be swift and decisive. Admiral Kexthu had launched a barrage of energy weapons designed to disable the crystalline spires without harming human cities. Instead, the weapons were absorbed harmlessly by the spires and converted into more power for Earth's growing defensive network. "Impossible," Admiral Kexthu muttered, staring at his tactical display. "Our weapons had no effect at all. On Earth, the spires had created a planetary defense system that operated on principles the aliens had never encountered. Instead of trying to block incoming attacks, the spires converted hostile energy into useful power, making Earth stronger with every assault." Marine Sergeant Kate Thompson was leading a squad through the underground complexes that had opened beneath New York City. The tunnels were filled with the same warm crystalline material found in all the architect sites, but these passages seemed to go on forever. "How deep do you think this goes?" asked Corporal Mike Davis, one of Kate's squad members. "Command says these tunnels connect to every major city on Earth," Kate replied, checking her enhanced rifle. Like all military equipment, her weapons had been upgraded by the architect technology. The rifle now fired concentrated energy beams instead of bullets, and it never seemed to run out of ammunition. As they moved deeper into the complex, Kate's enhanced senses picked up something disturbing. The air was getting colder, and there was a feeling of wrongness that made her skin crawl. Her squad felt it too. They were approaching something dangerous. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that stretched beyond the range of their flashlights. In the center of the space hung a sphere of absolute darkness, crackling with energy that hurt to look at directly. This was clearly the source of the wrongness they had been sensing. "That's got to be it," Kate whispered. the Devourer's prison, but the prison was failing. Cracks ran across its surface like lightning, and dark energy was leaking out in steady streams. Wherever the energy touched the crystalline walls, the material would dim and lose its warm glow. Dr. Lisa Chang was monitoring similar discoveries from orbit aboard the UES Horizon. Every major city on Earth was reporting the same thing: vast underground chambers with failing prisons at their centers. The Devourer wasn't contained in just one location. It was spread across multiple prison cells worldwide. "Captain Morrison," Lisa said, studying her readings, "I'm detecting at least 12 major prison sites on Earth. The entity appears to have been divided and contained in separate locations to prevent it from reforming." Jake Morrison was trying to process this information while dealing with increasingly hostile communications from the alien fleet. Admiral Kexthu had been joined by commanders from several other alien civilizations, all of whom wanted Earth destroyed before the Devourer could escape. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," came a new voice over the communication channel. This was Commander Zara from the Helix Confederation, her species known for their advanced psychic abilities. "The Devourer isn't just a creature. It's a collective consciousness that absorbs the life force and knowledge of every species it encounters." "How many species has it consumed?" Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Hundreds," Commander Zara replied grimly. "Each one made it stronger, more intelligent, more dangerous. By the time the architects finally managed to imprison it, the Devourer had absorbed the defensive capabilities of dozens of advanced civilizations." In the underground chamber beneath New York, Kate Thompson and her squad were getting their first direct contact with the imprisoned entity. Dark tendrils of energy reached toward them, but something unexpected happened when the energy touched Kate. Instead of being consumed, she began to glow with the same blue light that was emanating from all the architect technology. Through that connection, Kate could suddenly hear the Devourer's voice in her mind. But instead of the monster she had expected, the voice sounded tired and sad. "So long," the voice whispered. "Trapped for so long. They said I was evil, but I never chose to consume. I only did what I had to do to survive their experiments." Kate staggered backward, her mind reeling from the contact. "It's not what we thought," she said to her squad. "It's not trying to destroy everything. It's been a prisoner too." The revelation was being experienced by humans all over Earth. Wherever people came into contact with the escaping energy from the failing prisons, they formed a brief psychic connection with the Devourer. And the story it told was very different from what the aliens had claimed. Professor Dan Miller was experiencing the most detailed contact in the Amazon ruins. The architect technology there had given him access to historical records that revealed the truth about the Devourer's imprisonment. "Pete, you need to see this," Dan called to his assistant. The holographic displays were now showing the complete history of the Devourer's capture. The entity had originally been a peaceful, curious species that explored the galaxy by forming temporary connections with other civilizations. They would share consciousness briefly, exchange knowledge, and then move on. The architects had encountered them and seen potential in their abilities. They didn't imprison it because it was dangerous, Dan realized, reading through the records. They imprisoned it because they wanted to study it, to learn how to absorb other civilizations the way it did naturally. The architect records revealed a dark truth about the supposedly noble civilization that had built the prison. The architects hadn't been protecting the galaxy from the Devourer. They had been using it as a power source, forcing it to consume other species so they could harvest the absorbed knowledge and abilities. Dr. Chang was receiving these revelations from multiple sources across Earth. "Captain," she said urgently, "the humans are all reporting the same thing. The Devourer was turned into a weapon by the architects, not born as one." Jake Morrison felt a chill as he realized what this meant.
"So the aliens out there? The ones who want to destroy Earth? They're following orders from the same people who tortured this entity in the first place?"
"Not exactly," Lisa replied. "The architects disappeared millions of years ago. But their descendants, the current Galactic Union, have been taught that the Devourer is a natural threat that must be contained at all costs." Admiral Kexthu was monitoring these human communications, and his expression was troubled. "These revelations cannot be accurate," he said to his fellow commanders. "The architects were the founders of galactic civilization. They would not have committed such acts. But Commander Zara's psychic abilities were picking up the same information, that the humans were discovering. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I'm sensing truth in their claims. The humans' enhanced mental abilities are allowing them to access records that have been hidden for millions of years." Back on Earth, the failing prison systems were creating an unexpected opportunity. As more dark energy escaped, more humans were able to form connections with the Devourer. And with each connection, both the humans and the imprisoned entity were learning from each other. Kate Thompson found that her brief contact with the Devourer had left her with enhanced combat abilities. She could predict her enemy's movements and react faster than should have been humanly possible. Other humans who had made contact were reporting similar enhancements. Scientists were solving problems they had never studied. Artists were creating works beyond their previous skill levels, and engineers were designing technology that shouldn't have been possible. "It's not consuming us," Kate reported to her commanders. "It's sharing with us. Every time a human makes contact, both sides become stronger." The aliens in orbit were detecting these changes with growing alarm. The humans weren't being consumed by the Devourer. They were forming a symbiotic relationship with it. And the combination was creating capabilities that exceeded anything in the known galaxy. Admiral Kexthu made a decision that would change everything. "All ships prepare for immediate planetary bombardment. The humans and the Devourer cannot be allowed to merge completely." But as the alien weapons charged up for the attack, every human on Earth suddenly received the same message, transmitted directly into their minds through the growing psychic network. "The Guardians are ready. The prison will become a partnership. Prepare to defend your world." Jake Morrison felt the message too, even in space. For the first time since this crisis began, he realized that humanity wasn't facing this threat alone. They had an ally that had been waiting millions of years for someone to listen to its side of the story. "Admiral Kexthu," Jake said into the communication channel, "I think you need to know something about the entity you're so afraid of. It's not our enemy anymore." The alien commander's response was swift and final. "Then you have become our enemy instead." The weapons of dozens of alien warships turned toward Earth, preparing to destroy the planet rather than allow the human Devourer alliance to survive. But deep beneath Earth's surface, ancient systems were awakening. Systems designed not just to contain the Devourer, but to protect it if the need ever arose. The final battle for Earth's survival was about to begin, but humanity would not be fighting it alone. The second wave of alien attacks came from multiple directions simultaneously. Admiral Kexthu had coordinated with commanders from 6 different civilizations, each contributing their most advanced warships to what they believed would be the final assault on Earth. Air Force Major Ryan Clark was leading a squadron of 12 fighters when the attack began. His F-22 Raptor had been transformed by the architect technology into something that defied physics as he understood it. The aircraft responded to his thoughts rather than manual controls, and its weapon systems had capabilities that no human engineer had ever imagined. "Dragon Squadron, this is Dragon Leader," Ryan said into his radio. "Multiple bogies incoming from all vectors. Time to see what these new birds can really do." His wingman, Captain Amy Foster, was flying beside him in her own transformed fighter. "Major, are you seeing what I'm seeing? My instruments are showing enemy craft that are bigger than aircraft carriers." The alien warships were indeed massive, each one easily 10 times the size of any human military vessel. But as the human fighters approached, something remarkable happened. The pilots found they could interface directly with their aircraft through the architect technology, creating a partnership between human intuition and alien engineering. Ryan's fighter suddenly accelerated to speeds that should have killed him, but the architect systems protected him from the G-forces. His weapons locked onto alien targets with perfect accuracy, and when he fired, the energy beams punched through alien armor that should have been impervious to human technology. "This is impossible," Admiral Kexthu muttered as he watched his ships being outmaneuvered by what should have been primitive human aircraft. Their technology was barely capable of interplanetary flight just yesterday. The human pilots were experiencing combat in ways they had never imagined possible. They could sense the positions of enemy ships before their instruments detected them, predict attack patterns, and react with superhuman speed and precision. Captain Foster shot down 3 alien fighters in rapid succession, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge their return fire as if she could see the future. "Major Clark, I don't think we're entirely human anymore," she said over the radio. Maybe not, Ryan replied. Destroying another alien warship with a single shot. But we're still fighting for humanity. Meanwhile, deep underground, Sergeant Kate Thompson and her squad were making an incredible discovery. The failing prisons weren't just containing the Devourer. They were connected to a vast network of chambers that extended throughout Earth's core. Corporal Davis, look at this, Kate called to her squad mate. She had found what appeared to be a control room filled with crystalline interfaces that responded to human touch. When Kate placed her hand on one of the interfaces, information flooded her mind. She could suddenly see the entire alien fleet in orbit, understand their weapons systems, and most importantly, access Earth's planetary defense network. I can control the spires from here, Kate said in amazement. All of them. Worldwide. The crystalline spires on Earth's surface weren't just defense systems. They were parts of a massive weapon array that had been built by the architects millions of years ago. The system had been dormant, waiting for someone with the right genetic markers to activate it. Professor Dan Miller was making similar discoveries in the Amazon ruins. The architect records were revealing the true purpose of Earth's transformation. Pete, this is incredible, Dan said, studying the holographic displays. The architects didn't just create a prison, they created a test. They wanted to see if a species could evolve that was compatible with the Devourer without being consumed by it. The test had multiple phases. First, the candidate species had to develop intelligence while living on the same planet as the imprisoned entity. Then they had to discover the alien technology and integrate with it successfully. Finally, they had to face the choice of whether to destroy the Devourer or form a partnership with it. We passed all the tests, Pete realized. Humanity is the first species in millions of years to successfully integrate with both the architect technology and the Devourer itself. Dr. Lisa Chang was monitoring the battle from space, watching human forces perform feats that violated everything she thought she knew about physics and biology. The human fighters were moving faster than light. Their weapons were punching through dimensional barriers, and their pilots were demonstrating psychic abilities that rivaled the most advanced alien species. Captain Morrison, she said urgently, the humans aren't just using architect technology, they're improving it. Every time they engage the enemy, their systems become more advanced. Jake Morrison was watching the same impossible battle unfold. Human forces that should have been overwhelmed in minutes were instead turning the tide against an alien armada that represented the combined military might of dozens of civilizations, but the aliens weren't giving up. Commander Zara of the Helix Confederation had convinced the other alien leaders to try a different approach. Admiral Kexthu, Zara said through the fleet communication channel, our conventional weapons are useless against the human architect hybrid technology. We need to target the source of their power. What do you propose? The Admiral asked. We destroy the planet itself, crack it open and expose the Devourer's prisons to the vacuum of space. Without Earth's biosphere to support them, both the humans and the entity will die. The alien fleet began charging weapons designed to shatter planets. These were devices that had been created specifically to destroy worlds infected by cosmic threats, weapons of last resort that had never been used against an inhabited planet. But as the planetary destruction weapons powered up, every human on Earth received the same psychic message. The final test begins now. Choose your future. The message came from the Devourer, but it wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. The entity was offering humanity a choice that no other species had ever been given. They could remain separate, using the architect technology to defend themselves, or they could accept full integration with the Devourer and become something entirely new. Sergeant Kate Thompson felt the choice most clearly. In the underground control room, she could see both paths laid out before her. If humanity remained separate, they would eventually be destroyed by the combined forces of the galaxy, who would never stop seeing them as a threat. If they accepted integration, they would become powerful enough to defend themselves, but they would no longer be entirely human. Around the world, humans were making the same choice individually. Some chose to remain purely human, accepting the architect enhancements but rejecting the Devourer's offer. Others chose full integration, allowing the entity to share their consciousness completely. But most chose a third option that surprised even the Devourer, partial integration that allowed them to remain human while gaining access to the accumulated knowledge and abilities of hundreds of consumed civilizations. Major, Ryan Clark felt the change happen in the middle of aerial combat. Suddenly, he didn't just know how to fly his fighter. He knew how to pilot ships from dozens of different alien species. His tactical knowledge expanded to include strategies from civilizations that had been absorbed by the Devourer millions of years earlier. "This is Dragon Leader to all units," he said over the radio. "Something's changed. I can see weaknesses in their formation that I couldn't see before." The human fighters began executing maneuvers based on combat techniques from species that had been extinct for eons. They used weapons combinations that confused the alien commanders, who found themselves facing tactics from their own extinct enemies. Professor Miller was experiencing the integration from a scientific perspective. The knowledge of hundreds of civilizations was suddenly available to him, but filtered through human consciousness in a way that made it understandable rather than overwhelming. The Devourer never wanted to consume civilizations, he realized. It was trying to preserve them. Every species it absorbed was saved from extinction, their knowledge and culture preserved forever. The alien fleet's planet-killer weapons were almost fully charged when Admiral Kexthu received an unexpected communication. It came from Earth, but it wasn't from any human government or military force. "I am the one you call the Devourer," the message began. "But I am also the voice of every civilization that has ever faced extinction. I speak for the humans of Earth, but also for the Zarathi of Kepler 442b, who you destroyed 3,000 years ago for refusing to join your union. I speak for the crystalline minds of the Vega system, who you sterilized because their technology was too advanced. I speak for hundreds of species who chose freedom over subjugation." Admiral Kexathu's hands trembled as he recognized the names. Those were classified operations, historical records that were supposed to be sealed forever. "You have spent millennia destroying any species that refused to accept your version of galactic order," the voice continued. "Today that changes. Earth offers the galaxy a new choice. Cooperation instead of domination. Partnership instead of conquest." The message was being transmitted on frequencies that reached every inhabited world in the galaxy, not just the ships in orbit around Earth. For the first time in galactic history, the Galactic Union's activities were being exposed to every civilization they claimed to protect. The moment of decision arrived when the Devourer's prison finally failed completely. The dark sphere in the chamber beneath New York cracked open like an egg, releasing the entity that had been trapped for millions of years. But instead of the destructive force that everyone expected, what emerged was something beautiful and strange. A flowing mass of energy that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Sergeant Kate Thompson and her squad watched in amazement as the entity approached them. When it touched Kate, she didn't feel the fear she had expected. Instead, she felt a sense of completeness, as if she had found a missing part of herself that she never knew existed. Through the connection, Kate experienced the memories of the Devourer's first victims, but they weren't victims at all. They were partners who had chosen to join with the entity to preserve their civilizations when their worlds were dying. The Devourer hadn't consumed them. It had given them a form of immortality. It never wanted to hurt anyone, Kate whispered to her squad. It was trying to save them. Similar scenes were playing out in underground chambers all over Earth. The entity that had been divided into multiple prisons was reuniting with itself, but it wasn't returning to its original form. Instead, it was becoming something new, a hybrid consciousness that combined its ancient wisdom with human creativity and determination. Major Ryan Clark felt the change happen while he was still in combat with the alien fleet. The knowledge and experience of dozens of extinct civilizations flowed through his mind, but it was filtered through human consciousness in a way that made it usable rather than overwhelming. "All human forces, this is Dragon Leader," he said over the radio. "We're not just fighting for our survival anymore. We're fighting for the right to exist as equals in this galaxy." His fighter squadron engaged the alien warships with tactics that combined human unpredictability with the combat expertise of civilizations that had been fighting for millions of years. The results were devastating for the alien fleet, which found itself facing strategies they had thought were lost forever. Captain Amy Foster destroyed an entire alien battle group by using a maneuver that the extinct Zarathi species had perfected centuries before the Galactic Union wiped them out. "Major, I know things I never learned," she said over the radio. It's like I have the memories of pilots who died before humans even existed. The alien commanders were beginning to panic. Admiral Kexthu watched his forces being systematically destroyed by what had been primitive humans just days earlier. The worst part was that the humans seemed to know exactly how to counter every alien weapon and defense system. They're using our own extinct enemies' techniques against us, Commander Zara reported grimly. The Devourer has given them access to military knowledge from every civilization we've ever pacified, but the real shock came when Professor Dan Miller made contact with the architect technology in the Amazon ruins. The ancient systems revealed the truth about the Galactic Union's history, a truth that had been hidden for thousands of years. Pete, you need to see this, Dan said, studying the holographic records. The Galactic Union didn't evolve naturally. They were created by the architects as a control system to prevent other species from becoming too advanced. The records showed that the architects hadn't disappeared. They had transformed themselves into a form of collective consciousness that guided galactic civilization from behind the scenes. The Galactic Union believed they were making their own decisions, but they were actually following programming that had been embedded in their culture millions of years ago. The whole galactic civilization is a lie, Pete realized. They're all prisoners, just like the Devourer was. Dr. Lisa Chang was monitoring these revelations from space, along with the increasingly desperate communications from the alien fleet. The truth about galactic history was being transmitted to every inhabited world through the enhanced communication systems that Earth had developed. Captain Morrison, she said urgently, the humans aren't just revealing the Union's war crimes. They're exposing the fact that the entire galactic civilization has been manipulated by the architects for millions of years. Jake Morrison realized the implications immediately. They're not just fighting for Earth's freedom. They're offering to free the entire galaxy from a control system that most civilizations don't even know exists. The response from across the galaxy was immediate and unprecedented. Worlds that had been part of the Galactic Union for centuries began demanding explanations from their governments. Species that had accepted Union authority without question suddenly realized they had been living under artificial constraints, designed to prevent them from reaching their full potential. Admiral Kexthu received emergency communications from his homeworld ordering him to retreat immediately. The revelations about architect manipulation had caused massive civil unrest across Union territory, and every available ship was needed to maintain order. But the Admiral made a different choice. Instead of retreating, he opened a direct communication channel to Earth. Captain Morrison, Admiral Kexthu said, his voice heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge. We need to discuss terms. Jake Morrison found himself in the unprecedented position of negotiating on behalf of not just humanity, but potentially the entire galaxy. The human devourer integration had given Earth access to information and capabilities that made them the most powerful force in known space. What kind of terms? Jake asked. The kind that might prevent a galactic civil war, the Admiral replied. Your people have revealed truths that will tear apart every government in Union space. We need to find a way forward that doesn't end in the destruction of galactic civilization. The negotiations took place over several days, with representatives from dozens of civilizations participating. The humans, now speaking with the combined voice of hundreds of absorbed species, presented a simple proposition. The galaxy could choose between continued domination under the hidden architect programming, or they could work together to build something new. Sergeant Kate Thompson had become one of the primary human representatives, her integration with the Devourer giving her access to diplomatic knowledge from dozens of extinct civilizations. She stood in the same underground chamber where the entity had been freed, now serving as Earth's primary communication center. We're not asking you to submit to our authority, Kate said to the assembled alien representatives. We're offering you the same choice we were given, the chance to become something more than what your creators intended. The offer was unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of conquest or subjugation, humanity was proposing genuine partnership. Species could maintain their independence and cultural identity while sharing knowledge and resources for mutual benefit. Major Ryan Clark had become the commander of Earth's new Space Defense Force, which now included ships that combined human engineering with technology from dozens of civilizations. But these weren't warships designed for conquest. They were exploration and rescue vessels intended to help other species break free from architect programming. We learned something, Important from our integration with the Devourer, Ryan explained to a gathering of alien military commanders. Diversity makes us stronger. Every species that joins our alliance brings something unique that benefits everyone. The transformation of galactic civilization didn't happen overnight, but it began with a simple message that was transmitted to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison delivered the message from Earth, speaking not just as a human, but as a representative of every species that had ever dreamed of freedom. For millions of years, this galaxy has been shaped by fear, Jake said, his words carried by communication systems that reached across thousands of light years. Fear of change, fear of growth, fear of what might happen if species were allowed to reach their full potential. Today, we choose hope instead. The message continued. Earth extends its hand in friendship to any civilization that wants to grow beyond the limitations that have been placed upon them. We offer knowledge without domination, partnership without conquest, and the chance to explore what this galaxy could become if we work together instead of living in fear of each other. Professor Dan Miller watched the galaxy's response from the Amazon ruins, where the architect technology continued to reveal new possibilities. Species across thousands of worlds were accepting Earth's offer, eager to break free from the invisible chains that had bound their development for so long. "It's working, Pete," Dan said to his assistant. "We're seeing the beginnings of true galactic civilization, not one built on control and fear, but on cooperation and mutual respect." The Devourer, now fully integrated with human consciousness, had become something it had never been before. Not a consumer of civilizations, but their liberator. The entity that had once been feared as the galaxy's greatest threat had become its greatest hope for freedom. In the months that followed, Earth became the center of a new kind of galactic alliance. Ships from hundreds of worlds arrived not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in building something that had never existed before, a truly free galactic civilization. Admiral Kexthu, now serving as a liaison between the old Union worlds and the new alliance, stood on the observation deck of a human space